I'll use that one. We'll sort out this later on. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being patient with us. Murphy's Law obviously got in the way of events tonight, and our projector's not working, so we're still live streaming, and we have a great audience tonight. Obviously, we have a conflict with our other favorite history group, the Vietnam Roundtable group, so we appreciate everybody in attendance tonight. If I could ask you to please silence your cell phones. If you have them on, put them in silent mode or put them in vibration so they don't bother our speakers tonight. And once that is done, I would invite you to stand as able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Change mics on me again? There you go. As always, we want to recognize our veterans, especially our World War II veterans. I know we have one on the stage. I see Irv in the audience. Any other World War II veterans? Just two? All right, well, thank you very much for being here. As always, we want to thank all of our veterans for joining us, for sharing their stories, and thank their families for supporting them. We don't have the Helmet Committee with us tonight because they're at their roundtable in Harrisburg. But we do have a few. Thank you very much. So we do have the Helmet Committee. We're going to make it work. So as always, we'll have donations are welcome, and we appreciate donations to help support our organization. That's our primary means of fundraising. So those will be in the back of the room when you walk on your way out. We also have coffee mugs for sale, and we're also doing a raffle. So they're the American Experience Museum, the World War II American Experience in Gettysburg is having a World War II weekend. And that is on 26 to 28 July, and we have 4 tickets for raffle. So those are, if you didn't see them on the way in, 2 drawings of 2 tickets, and they're how much? $2
for 1, 3 for 5.
Okay, $2 for 1 entry and $3 for 5. $5 for 3. That makes more sense. Checking my math. You think I'm not on my game still? All right. So if you're interested, find Patty before we do the drawing at the end of the program. You can pass money up through the aisles, etc. That'd be great. As always, we do this day in World War II history. And I think this is kind of interesting. It's maybe a little bit of trivial, but in 1944, Count Klaus von Stauffenberg, a German army officer, transported a bomb to Adolf Hitler's headquarters in Berchtesgaden, Bavaria. The assassination attempt was delayed and was postponed until the 20th of July in Rostenburg. Obviously, we're another movie about Valkyrie. So I thought that was interesting. I mentioned World War II weekend coming up, 26 to 28 July in Gettysburg. Before that, on the 19th to 21st of July, there's also a World War II weekend in Berwick, Pennsylvania. They have a great museum there. And then, as I mentioned last time, 14 and 15 September, the Army Heritage Center in Carlisle, Pennsylvania is having the Army Expo. And we'll have a table that will represent them. They have great expositions and great information for all types of subject matters, from Sons of the Revolution all the way to current day. Upcoming speakers, so obviously we're in the middle of the month right now, it seems like, but on the 1st of August, so just a couple weeks away, we're going to have Harry Miller speak to us, and he's from the 740th Tank Battalion, and he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So that's going to be a great program in just a few weeks. All right, a little bit late, but we're going to introduce our guest speakers now. You guys ready? Perfect. So we have 3, Mel Payne, Aaron Watkins, and Dr. Eugene Richardson. I'm going to read a quick bio about them each, and then I'm going to let them have the rest of the night. So Mel Payne is the president and owner of Knowledge and Success, Inc., a talent development through education center exploration company that connects students with STEM professionals and STEM businesses to enhance their knowledge and understanding about STEM career opportunities. Mel is also the board president for the Greater Philadelphia chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., and co-owner of Cuba Travel, a travel advisory organization specializing in group, cultural, and mission travel. Mel is a Vietnam War veteran and holds a degree in business administration from Pierce College, a Bachelor of Science in Finance from Philadelphia University, and an MBA in Marketing from LaSalle University. Mel and his wife Denise, who is also with us tonight, have served as missionaries in Kenya, Nicaragua, and South Africa since 2007. Their goal in life is to make the world a better place for others, especially those less fortunate than themselves. Thank you for being here. Mr. Aaron Watkins, on my far right, is a native of Memphis, Tennessee, and a graduate of Melrose High School. He enrolled at Tuskegee University in August of 1963, majoring in electronics with a minor in business. Aaron made the Dean's List while becoming a commissioned officer in ROTC and completing the Army ROTC Flight Instructor Program under Chief Anderson. Chief Anderson was the instructor at the Tuskegee Academy, who was also the pilot for Eleanor Roosevelt. Aaron was also inducted to the Tuskegee University Sports Hall of Fame in 2013 for baseball. Aaron earned his AAS degree in computing from City College of Chicago and an MBA in business from the University of Detroit. He served in the U.S. Army as an officer in the Signal Corps Aviation Branch, completing his aviation training for helicopters, receiving his wings, and was selected for advanced training for the Chinook helicopter in 1968. Captain Watkins served in Vietnam in the Central Highlands as an aircraft commander of the Chinook, where he received the Bronze Star and an Air Medal. After returning to the United States, he was sent to Frankfurt, Germany, as an operations officer and later promoted to company commander of the Data Processing Center Company. Captain Watkins' final assignment was at a military academy liaison officer for the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York. Aaron is listed in a book, The 600 Black Helicopter Pilots in Vietnam by Dr. Joe Pons, and after leaving the military, he was employed by General Motors Corporation, Chevrolet Division at their world headquarters, and he retired from that organization. Thank you for being with us tonight. And finally, at center stage, we have Dr. Eugene J. Richardson, Jr., who was born on September 18th, 1925. Do the math on that one, in Cleveland, Ohio. His early education took place primarily in Toledo, and Richardson had a dream of flying ever since attending an Ohio air show starring black stunt flyers in the 1930s. Eugene was living in Camden, New Jersey, when he earned the status of pre-aviation cadet in the Army Air Corps. He entered active duty in October of 1943 at Keesler Field, Mississippi, for basic flight military training, and in 1944, Eugene went to Tuskegee, Alabama for pilot training and subsequently received his pilot wings and officer's commission on the 11th of March, 1945 with class 45 Alpha. Qualified to fly fighter planes, he was not deployed because the war in Europe ended 2 months after he was commissioned. And Richardson takes great pride in the achievements of his fellow Tuskegee Airmen in Europe, where they gunned down 112 enemy aircraft and in their signature rail-tailed P-47s, P-40, P-39s, and P-51 aircraft, and provided aerial protection for bombers flying through the clouds over Germany. The Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's first black fighter pilots to see combat, did more than risk their lives for freedom in World War II. The outstanding combat record of black pilots shattered the pre-war stereotypes and set the stage for historic changes in the civil rights during the 1950s and 60s. The dedication of the Tuskegee Airmen led to President Harry Truman's 1948 executive order ending segregation in the military, and it also set the stage for landmark legislation such as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Dr. Richardson was a charter member of the Greater Philadelphia chapter of Tuskegee Airmen, and the Congressional Medal of Honor was awarded to Dr. Richardson and his fellow Tuskegee Airmen by President Bush in the White House in 2007, and he's very proud to wear that medal today. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. So good evening, and thank you for having us here. My name is Mel Payne, as I was introduced. I'm the president of the Greater Philadelphia Chapter of Tuskegee Airmen. Just want to tell you a little bit about what we do and who we are. We are a volunteer organization, 501c3, and we do three major things, three missions that we have. One is sustaining the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, Dr. Richardson, and we are blessed to have 6 originals that are still living from Philadelphia. The youngest is 97. The oldest just turned 105 on May 14th. We have the youngest is Nathan Thomas. He's 97. He was in communications and education. Then Miss Callie Gentry, who was a stenographer for Benjamin O. Davis. She's 98. We have Miss Alma Bailey, who's 99. She was a cadet nurse. We have Judge Robert Williams, who was a common police judge in Pennsylvania. He was a bomber pilot. Black bomber pilots were trained but never were able to fly in the war. He just turned 101, and of course we have Dr. Eugene Richardson, who's here with us. He's 98. He will be 99 in September 18th. So we are blessed to have some living history that we all are able to talk to. And, you know, it's something special when you can talk to people every day that have many, many more sunsets than I even imagined that I'll see. So that's one of the blessings. In order to sustain the legacy, we do a number of things. One is we do these types of presentations because if you don't ask, we can't tell. So I'm always gracious for the fact that you ask us to come. We also sell products. We are a total volunteer organization. No one's getting paid in this organization, and I'm blessed to have a group of people that are dedicated to doing that. We sell products. You'll see some we have out on the table that you can purchase. That money then goes back to young people. It goes back in the form of STEM programming. We do flight experiences, drone training, robotics training, and we even support youth that are interested in other programs. Last year we supported a young lady that was going to space camp. So we do those types of projects. The third thing that we do is we provide scholarships. We provide scholarships from national. We have a national organization. We have 48 other chapters around the country. But our chapter, with a few others, created some local scholarships. So we gave $14,500 in local scholarships last year. But our local scholarships are in the names and the functions of the individuals who serve, because most people know about the pilots. They don't know about the nurses and administrators and mechanics and the like. So we have 6 scholarships in the names of the individuals that I was just talking about. The other thing that we started just 2 years ago, we were blessed with the designation by the state legislation of Pennsylvania. March 29th is designated as Tuskegee Airmen Day in Pennsylvania. So that's when we celebrate this special event. We started an outreach program. And the outreach program is for individuals who believe that they may have Tuskegee Airmen or women in their family. Now, I need to define that. When I say Tuskegee Airmen and women, there were men, women, blacks, whites that all participated in Tuskegee. And when President George W. Bush presented that Congressional Gold Medal, it qualified. Everyone who supported the pilots qualified. There were 992 pilots trained. There were over 15,000 people who participated from 1941 to 1949. We've been blessed to honor 6 families this past year that we've been notified of. And what we do is either on March 29th or at our scholarship event, which is the first Sunday in May, we present those families with a Tuskegee Airman Congressional Medal. So it's something that we want to make sure that that legacy continues to go on. We are fortunate because we already have 4 families that were set up for this year. So we hope that we'll reach maybe a few thousand of the members that we're serving. So that's what we do as an organization. We have an exhibit center in Horsham, PA that has original Tuskegee Airmen memorabilia. We have uniforms, we have programs, we have paintings with signatures, we have a number of things, which is in Horsham, Pennsylvania. We're working with the African American Museum of Philadelphia. When that opens up in its new location, we'll be moving some memorabilia there. We also have an office in Mount Airy, Pennsylvania, which is our Tuskegee Airmen office, and that also has memorabilia. So we continue that legacy to moving on. What we do is we keep working with the heritage families because we have to get younger. I mean, I'm one of the younger people in the group, and I'm 76 years old, so we're trying to get younger and younger. But I just want to let you know about the things that we do, and I'm going to turn it over to the people that you really came here to see and talk to. I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Watkins, who it was mentioned was a Chinook Pilot commander, and I know he doesn't like me to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So I've known Aaron for 10 years. So Aaron and I are sitting around talking with another gentleman, and we're sitting in our exhibit center. Aaron says to me, you know what? There's some things that you need to see from the Library of Congress about me. And I said, what do you mean about you? And he shows us that Aaron was actually one of the first black Chinook commanders in Vietnam. He's like the rest of the Tuskegee Airmen. They don't talk about it. You have to draw it out of them. But everyone needs to know about our history, all of our history. We're talking about Tuskegee Airmen history, but we all need to know about all of our history, because if we knew about our history, we would treat each other differently. We'd understand that we're more alike than we are different, and it would make life easier so that we don't repeat some of the horrible things that happened in history for us. So thank you very much for having us. I'm going to turn this over to Aaron Watkins.
I want to say thank you, Mel, for that. I get a chance to carry the bags of the original Tuskegee Airmen and Dr. Richardson and listen to the stories of the Tuskegee Airmen. Really, Dr. Richardson really took me in, mentored me, and I never thought I'd be standing before people like you or speaking out for the organization, even though I was trained by Chief Anderson, who was his chief instructor, who flew Eleanor Roosevelt, and how they got the name when I was 19 years old. And Chief Anderson used to tell me the story, and I would sit there. And then one day when I left school and graduated, I said, wow, he was famous. And it hit me. The light bulb went on. And then all at once, I get transferred to Pennsylvania. And I moved to a location which was 5 miles from where he was born, and then where he grew up at. And now all the stories come alive. Now I'm in my 60s before I realized how great. But because of them, I was able to fulfill my dream. So tonight, we're going to interact together, Dr. Richardson and myself, and we have a short film, so we'll see how this works out here. We're just glad to be here. Okay, let's see.
Coming up, they piloted different planes on the exact same missions, but when these World War II heroes finally met face-to-face 50 years later, neither could believe what the other was telling him.
I got out my picture of Miss Pitchell's second grade class, and there were 40 children in the class, and there was one black boy, and I was standing right next to him.
In the dog days of World War II, in the flak-filled skies over war-torn Europe, the paths of 2 American flyers would cross. One flew a heavy bomber, the B-17 Flying Fortress. The other was his escort, piloting a nimble P-51 Mustang fighter, keeping enemy aircraft at bay. One man was black, the other white. They never met face-to-face until 50 years later, when they learned of an extraordinary series of coincidences that had them living remarkably parallel lives. Italy, 1944. As part of the American 15th Air Force, Herb Heilbrunn flies bombing missions over enemy territory, piloting an airplane that is both a lethal weapon and an easy target. The B-17, a long-range bomber, is armed with a dozen machine guns and can carry more than 17,000 pounds of explosives. But it is slow and highly vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighter attacks.
Combat in World War II was a deadly business. They built 12,721 B-17s, and they shot down 4,750 of them. The Germans used to call them those tin coffins that the Americans flew in.
To protect the bombers from enemy planes, American fighters, like the P-51, escort the bombers as they headed to battle. Some of the most successful P-51 pilots are from the 332nd Fighter Group. They are better known as the Tuskegee Airmen, African-American aviators who were trained at an air base in Tuskegee, Alabama. Each P-51 fighter group has their rudders painted a different color. The Tuskegee Squadron is known as the Red Tails because of their distinctive red rudders. One of the Tuskegee pilots, also stationed in Italy, is Lieutenant John Lear.
We're always anticipating that you're going to be attacked and by a superior force, and this is what has happened on a few occasions.
During their 2 years in combat, the Tuskegee Airmen flew more than 15,000 sorties and shot down over 1,000 German aircraft. The Red Tails were a welcome sight to the bomber crews. The Tuskegee pilots never lost a bomber to an enemy fighter attack.
Yesterday, I fulfilled one of my ambitions as a combat pilot. I got one airplane.
50 years after the war, Herb Heilbrunn wants to thank some of the P-51 pilots who saved his life many times over. When the Cincinnati native hears about a meeting of the local chapter of Tuskegee Airmen, he decides to attend.
I wanted to find, if I could, an airman that might have escorted me during my combat missions over Europe and give him a hug for all he and all these other airmen did to save my life.
This guy comes in and he says, "You're John." I said, "Yes, I flew over in Italy," and he gave me a big hug, and I was, kind of wonder who this guy coming to give me a great big hug,
The men compare notes. It turns out that Lear had flown cover for Heilbrunn on at least 2 missions in December of 1944.
The only 2 that we could really verify by mission sheets were 2 very, very tough targets, Bruck's Czechoslovakia and Black Hammer, Germany. And Bruck's Czechoslovakia was the largest oil refinery that the Germans had. And we hit it Christmas Day of '44, and we were on the target approximately 15 minutes. My airplane was hit 89 times. I still have one piece here, piece of flak that came through the leading edge and tore some cables, and that was my Christmas present.
But their chat reveals more coincidences. Both men had wanted to fly since they were boys. They had both signed up for the military within weeks after Pearl Harbor. Both men worked in the same aircraft factory in Ohio while waiting to be called into service. And there is more. Both men grew up in the same town, in the same neighborhood. And remarkably, they attended the same grade school in the early 1930s.
He said to me, Herb, I grew up in Avondale, and I went to a school that was an old estate, the Workham Estate, that was converted into 5 grades, and I was there in the 2nd grade. I said, John, I lived on an adjacent street, and I said, I was at that school in the 2nd grade.
Amazed by mounting coincidences, Heilbrunn digs out his old 2nd grade class picture. He carefully examines the faded photo and cannot believe what he sees.
And I went home and I got out my picture of Miss Pitchell's 2nd grade class. And there were 40 children in the class, and there was one black boy. And I was standing right next to him.
He says, "Well, John, if that little black guy is you, man, this is getting real weird." I looked at the picture, and it was me, and I said, "Yep, Herb, that's me."
The local newspaper gets wind of the story about these 2 2nd graders reunited in combat in the skies over Europe. The pair become something of a phenomenon in Cincinnati. They are asked to give speeches, especially at schools, about their experiences in the war and about how they came together after years of living parallel lives.
John talks first, and towards the end of my talk, I always say, especially to the kids, there's one thing I forgot to tell you. They really liked it, that we were in the 2nd grade together, and we were 8 years old, and 16 years after that picture was taken, he's flying my wing, and 50-odd years later, I find him to give him a hug for all he and his fellow airmen and Tuskegee people did for me.
We get letters from the kids, from teachers, from people all around, commenting on what a great job we're doing, how important they think it is.
We were really close. He's a wonderful man, and I'm very, very fond of him.
Okay. What you think about it? Great. Great. Well, I'm going to do something here. Our president, he doesn't know this yet, but it's supposed to be interactive between Dr. Richardson, but he's involved in this, so this is the first time I've done this. Mel, can you tell about our organization in Philadelphia when we had the original Tuskegee Airmen and the bomber pilots and the people that come together? Remember when we had that event?
Yes, so one of the fighter pilots, bomber fighter pilots, white bomber fighter pilots, never had an opportunity to thank Tuskegee Airmen, as you saw in this movie. So a friend of ours put together a dinner, and two of the white bomber pilots came to that dinner, and they were able to meet Dr. Richardson, Roscoe Draper, he's the gentleman that's 105, Bert Levy, Nathan Thomas, and they were able to get together, and tears were shed because it's the first time that this gentleman was able to say thank you. The pilot, he passed away 2 years ago, but the other gentleman, we're going to attend his birthday party in September. He will be 100 years old, and we're going to be able to meet again and share those stories about what they did while they were over in Europe. It's something special. I'm just the beneficiary of it. I tell Dr. Richardson all the time, I get to travel with him, but I'm the one that receives all the benefits. So it's a lot of those actions that happen.
Yeah. So we get a chance to go out and speak, and these things do occur. And one of the guys was a gunner, and he was so glad to be there too. So it is very nice, tearing, emotional, when you see the original World War II bomber pilot, or people that participated in that theater, and the Tuskegee Airmen come together and shake hands and tell their story together. So it's great, great. That was a great, great event. I'm backing up here. Sometimes there's a pause here. Let's see if we get it. I may ask you to click on it. If not, it's on about a 2-minute clip. Okay. Okay. It didn't go. So let me tell you what this is. This is a 2-minute film. And I'm going to bring Dr. Richardson in on this one here. And this is a news clipping.
Members of the
here we go.
Tuskegee Airmen are some of the most highly decorated military pilots in our nation's history. But there was one honor that was overlooked for more than 70 years, until now. CBS's David Martin has the story.
It was the first Top Gun contest held in 1949, a gunnery competition among pilots from across the Air Force, won by a team from the famed all-black Tuskegee Airmen, even though the record book listed the winner as unknown.
They knew who won, but they just didn't want to recognize us.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel James Harvey is 98 years old, but it's easy to still see the fighter pilot who was part of that winning team. Here he is with the trophy. What happened to the trophy?
Well, it mysteriously got lost.
Until 2005, when a historian found it in storage at an Air Force museum.
She says, why isn't this on display? And the guy said, well, we can't display everything, but this item will never be on display.
It's on display now, and last week a plaque commemorating the first Top Guns was unveiled at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, where that original competition was held.
What does it mean to you?
Means an awful lot. We proved that we were the best. Okay, let's show it.
Nearly 73 years later, mission accomplished.
Been a life mission.
David Martin, CBS News, Pentagon.
I got the chills watching that story. I'm so glad they're getting the recognition they deserve. We'll be right back.
The first Top Gun contest, won by the Tuskegee Airmen. Dr. Richardson, you want to say anything about that?
It's just amazing that you could have a competition a competition where first place is not known. For quite some time, they did not know who did the first place at that Top Gun competition out in Nellis. And it took some time for some researchers to discover that the trophy was actually in a warehouse someplace in Ohio. And then they had to recognize that from Tuskegee Airmen were the first Top Guns in that military competition. But it took so long for people to realize who was in first place. But you have kids shooting marbles, they tell you who was in first place. So you got grown people flying airplanes, and they couldn't tell you right off who was in first place. But we finally got that squared away, and James Harvey and others, Stewart, Temple, and a guy named Alexander, I think, they were the guys that were the top guns at
Tom Cruise, right?
No. Tom Cruise. You're right, Tom Cruise. Yeah. Maverick. Yeah. Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Okay.
What they do with the truth is something phenomenal. Go.
Okay. Let me go to the next one here. And I put this up. Our president talked about this. Governor Wolf signed into law the commemoration day for Tuskegee Airmen. So March 29th is officially Pennsylvania Tuskegee Commemoration Day into law. And our first speaker was Governor Josh Shapiro. So we have been working on this for some time. So we're very proud of this. We get together and celebrate. And last year, we had a speaker who, the dean at Westchester University of the history department, Bob Kodosky, who wrote one of the books for us, Tuskegee in Philadelphia. And we had a lady there by the name of Mary Gross, a white lady by the name of Mary Gross, who great uncle was the first black to ever receive a license. And I'll tell you about that in the USA. Okay.
His name is Malik.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, Dr. Rich.
Okay.
See, Dr. Richardson don't need to look at the slides. I do. Okay? And unfortunately, he can't see back there. But you know, who are the Tuskegee Airmen? And Mel talked about that. It could be male, female, military, civilian, black or white. Yes, some of the white guys who trained them are Tuskegee Airmen. And how they got this name DOTA, D-O-T-A, Documented Original Tuskegee Airmen, it didn't come about very easy. You know, when you get a group of fighter pilots together, bomber pilots together, aviators together, we all got egos, you know? And so someone said, well, what are we going to name the organization? DOTA, someone said, Documented Original Tuskegee Airmen. So one guy said, well, that's the first class, the first 5 that got their wings. Then one guy stood up in the room and said, well, what about the 992 that got their wings? They said, oh, we may have to think about them. Then one guy said, well, what about the 450 that went to combat? Oh, we got to think about them too. Then someone said, what about the crew chief, the maintenance guy that kept your airplane up in the air? I said, wow, we got to think about them too. What about the cooks, you know, and the doctors and the nurses, the people that supported you? And someone in the room said, why should we discriminate against those who supported us during this Tuskegee experience? So that's how we got 15,000 Tuskegee Airmen. All the people that supported them during that experiment, during the 40s, World War II, at Tuskegee. So they are called DOTAs, Documented Original Tuskegee Airmen. Yes, go ahead.
So one of the original Tuskegee Airmen who passed away, we were fortunate enough to receive from his family It's a public relations document produced by Tuskegee, and in that document you see actual pictures of people who served in these different functions. Now think about this. 1941 in Tuskegee, Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, is this Tuskegee Airmen experiment taking place. People are being hung outside the gates, and these people are serving. But they had to have their own post office, their own public relations department, their own dentists, nurses, doctors, all had to be contained within the gates of Tuskegee. So that's how the number gets to be so large, but we don't think about that. And like Airman said, cooks, people that are doing the everyday things of life, which are so important, and they need to be honored also.
They say it takes 10 people to support a pilot and his airplane. People who service the airplane, but then there are people that service the pilots in areas other than in the airplane. A number of people have asked, well, where did they get the name Tuskegee? Well, of all the air bases in this country, of all the flight schools in this entire country, at the time of World War II, there was just one base in this entire USA where men of color could be trained to be pilots, where men of color could free to fly airplanes, and that was Tuskegee. Tuskegee is about 30 miles east of Montgomery, and that's the only place where men of color could receive their training to be pilots. So they selected the name Tuskegee Airmen because all 992 of the men who got their wings at Tuskegee went through Tuskegee's flying school. So they're all Tuskegee Airmen.
And you know what? I'm so glad they included the payroll officer, the finance officer, because I like to get paid, okay? We cannot exclude him, okay? Now you see this name up here, Emirate Malik. Emirate Malik, the first licensed Afro-American to receive a license in the USA, license number 105 in 1912. Now, let me just tell you this. This only became history maybe 12 years ago when this white lady by the name of Mary Gross came to our organization, and she said, I think I have the first black who ever received a license in the USA. And so our organization helped her to authenticate it. Now it's in the Smithsonian, it's in the history book. But she was in her great cousin attic. And she said she went in a trunk, and she went into another trunk, and she opened it up and she saw this picture of this black guy in an airplane. And in there was his license, his credential. I'm gonna use the word brand new, like it never been touched. And she was wondering, who is this person here? And as she said, she asked her family member, and she wrote a book, and we have the book out here too. Nobody in her family would say anything. And then once she said, like a great aunt said, that's your great uncle. And she was so proud of that, and that she went and got this authenticated, and now it is a part of history. This was lost history, okay? Lost history. He was the 105th person in the USA to ever receive a license in 1912. Not only that, but the Wright brothers and the Fisher brothers and everything. And when she discovered that, in the Fisher Brothers Museum was a picture in the museum on the wall with the Fisher brothers, and one black guy was in this picture. And for years they said, who is this black guy? And everybody said, well, that's the guy that cleaned the airplane. Once she came up with the picture, they matched it up, and they said, oh, that's Emirate Malik, license number 105. Okay? A great story, and she wrote about it, and we have her book outside, and she's a member of our organization, the Greater Philadelphia chapter. So that's a great story in itself. And I always say that Pennsylvania has a great history for black aviation, starting with Emirate Malik here in 1912, And also, I always talk about Chief Anderson, the chief instructor to the Tuskegee Airmen who flew Eleanor Roosevelt and how they got the name. And a guy by the name of Joseph Harrison, who was the first black to ever fly a helicopter from Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh. And then the first astronaut, black astronaut to go to space from Philadelphia, Beaufort. So Pennsylvania has a rich, rich history of black aviation. And we'd like to tell that story. That's his picture. That's what she saw when she opened up. And he was born in Sunbury, Pennsylvania.
That's my hometown.
Hometown. And
Yes, we met her 12 years ago. I was on the board of the Northumberland County Historical Society, and she came and gave this talk because the family predominantly was Caucasian.
correct.
And she found his history, and it was where she got the ball rolling and then came and found you guys. So he took off with the same little airport between Sunbury and Norrie, where in the 30s Amelia Earhart landed, and Dutch Van Kirk is his hometown. And when he was done overseas, he landed on that same little airport after World War II ended. So
Not only was he the first, he used to build his own plane and gliders and fly around in Sunbury also. He was a carpenter also. Now, he did crash some planes too, but that's how you learn back in those days, okay? Hey, you got to step outside that box, okay? Those guys are crazy. All aviators are crazy, including you. Yeah. Okay, great story. Here's a guy by the name of Eugene Bullard, and he's in 1917, he went to France. He's considered the first black fighter pilot. And I'm gonna ask Dr. Richardson to just talk about Eugene Bullard for us.
Yeah, Eugene Bullard is, his grandfather was on the island of Martinique, French island of Martinique. And Bullard was a lot of crazy, but at any rate, his home was in Columbus, Georgia. And Bullard had heard about this place called France, where men are treated more or less, where black men are treated more or less the same as white men. So Eugene Bullard felt he had this urge to get to France. And he didn't know where France was. He just knew it was across the ocean, and the ocean was to the east of Columbus, Georgia. So he started heading east. He figured sooner or later he would get to France. Well, it took a number of years and a number of adventures for him to finally get to France. He stowed away on a German ship in Newport News, Virginia, and that's how he got across the ocean as a stowaway on this German ship. They put him off the ship in Scotland, and there he earned his living by working in a circus and also by boxing. And he asked his manager if he could get him a boxing match in France. And he was fortunate the manager did get him a boxing match in France. So he gets to France at the time of World War I is bubbling up. And he learned that patriotic Frenchmen joined the military. So Eugene Bullard joined the military. He's in the 172nd, 170, I guess we called brigades back then. He was in the 172nd. And he was a gunner, a machine gunner. And he was wounded at the Battle of Verdun. And while he was in the hospital recuperating from his wounds, he learned that he could possibly be a gunner in the backseat of an airplane. In World War I, they had guys in the backseat of airplanes with machine guns shooting at other planes. So Bullard was able to get to the school and learn to shoot the gun and be assigned to a fighter squadron. And then as things progressed, he found that he could go to a flight school and actually fly the airplanes that he was being the gunner for. So he goes to Ford was one of the flight schools in France. So he goes to Ford and learns to fly, and he actually became a fighter pilot. He was credited with shooting down 2 German aircraft. So Eugene Jacques Bullard is an African American in France flying for the French service in World War I. And in good old democratic America, we had to sue. We had to sue the Army to get a chance to be pilots in the U.S. Air Force in World War II. But France had an African American flying in World War I, but we had to sue to get a chance to fly in World War II. So we finally did. Even one of our guys, they wouldn't accept him. Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr.
I'm gonna ask him to pause for a minute, because he's getting ahead of my slides here. But I'm gonna ask him to talk about Benjamin O. Davis, okay? And we do this. This is interacting here, because like I said, he could close his eye and tell you the whole story here. But Eugene Bullard, they made a movie called The Flyboys.
Flyboy, yeah.
And there was one black person, and that was Eugene Bullard. And Eugene Bullard wrote on his plane, "All blood run red." You know, back in those days, everybody liked to put the girlfriends on the plane, writing on the plane. He put "All blood run red." Very famous fight.
Regardless of country or skin color, the blood is always red. All blood runs red. Well, at any rate, in this country, they would not have blacks. Well, this thing came about as a result of in 1925. In 1925, the Army War College at Carlisle Barracks, not too far, somewhere around here, not too far.
Yeah, 1925.
Well, in 1925, the War College put out a report on the utilization of men of color in the military.
Now, I want you to pause on that one, too, because I want you to think about 1925 report in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and we're going to show you a film, and we're going to ask Dr. Richardson exactly what was on that report here. But you know what? Even though we talk about Eugene Bullard in 1917, the females like to get into the program too. You know, they like to get into that. So here's Bessie Coleman here, right here. I'm gonna pause again. We have to give credit to the females and the people behind the men. So Dr. Richardson's wife is Dr. Helen Richardson in the back room, so raise up your hand. That's his wife there. Okay. And our president, Mayor Payne, his wife is back. She give us the order and keep us organized. And she's back in the back working the books and the table, but she's in the room too. So we all need someone in our life to help support us and to organize us. This is Denise Payne coming in. She doesn't, Mayor Payne's wife. So we have Bessie Coleman here. She wanted to fly, but her relative said, you got to go to France to get a license. This is 1921. So Dr. Richardson, can you just tell us something about Bessie Coleman and her going to France and coming back?
Bessie Coleman was from Texas. Just out of Waco, Texas.
Yep.
And she got tired of scrubbing floors and picking cotton and carrying on. And her brother had gone to Chicago, and he was telling her about how things were in Chicago. So Bessie Coleman left Texas and went to Chicago. And in Chicago, she got a job in a barber shop as a, you do fingernails, manicurist. And she talks to her customers about her desires and her wants and her dreams and so forth. So the one guy was the publisher of a newspaper. He said, well, why don't you do what this guy Bullard did? Why don't you go to France and learn to fly? So he told her to save up some money, learn some French, and lo and behold, Bessie Coleman did go to France, and she got her pilot's license in 1921, I believe.
1921.
She got her pilot's license. Her idea was to learn to fly and come back to this country and have a flying school where people of color could learn to fly. Because as things were at that particular time, they would not accept people of color in a flying school. You know, like the rudder and the ailerons, no the skin color. But the controls do not care who pushes their button, so long as they push the right button at the right time. So at any rate, Bessie Coleman learns to fly, and she becomes the first person of color to get an international pilot's license. She comes back and wants to do a flying school, and she would put on air demonstrations, you know, like parachute jumps and that kind of thing, in order to give free ride and give rides, in order to try to raise enough money to buy an airplane so she could start this flying school. Well, unfortunately, Bessie Coleman was in the backseat of an airplane, and she was looking around for a good place to have a parachute landing. Now, when you get in a car, the first thing they tell you to do is what? Your seat belt. Well, that's triply important when you get in an airplane. You don't even let that damn thing move 2 feet before you harness up. Well, so Bessie's looking for this place, and the pilot helped her by tilting a little more. And in 1926, we lost Bessie because she fell out of the air. There are a lot of different stories about how that happened, but we lost her in 1926. But a lot of people started flying as a result of that. As a result of that, I saw an air circus put on by a group that called themselves the Blackbirds. This was in Mansfield, Ohio, in about 1920, maybe 1930, 31. I'm out to this field with my father and my uncle. We go out to this field. We get out there, and there are these things up in the sky making all this noise, and they're climbing and diving and turning and rolling and carrying on and doing all this fancy stuff up in the sky, making all this noise. And then these come down and land, and people get out of them. Oh man, that was the most fantastic thing in the world to me. These things were up there doing all that stuff like birds, and then come in and people get out. Well, that's when I got the desire to want to fly an airplane. And from the time I was about 5 or 6 years old, I wanted to fly an airplane. All of my extra thoughts and so forth went toward flying. And fortunately, I was able to take in 1942, I think it was, I learned about taking an exam, and if I passed the exam, instead of me being drafted at the age of 18, they would put me on track to go to flight school. Well, fortunately, I was able to pass that test, and they put me on track to go to flight school. And when I became 18, I entered, I went to the military and started on the path to going to flight school. And fortunately, I was able to finish flight school and get my wings March 11, 1945.
Okay, you know what? Bessie Coleman got her international license 2 years before Amelia Earhart. 2 years before her. So, and we like telling the history because, I mean, we could go straight to the Tuskegee Airmen, but these people set the stage in the past, and we stand on their shoulders, and they made it easier as time went along. Okay. So we like to tell the story.
I didn't finish telling you about Benjamin O. Davis. Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. because his father was the first general appointed by President Roosevelt. So Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. wants to be a pilot. Now he knows about this 1925 report from Carlisle Barracks about how lousy men of color were. So he said, well, if that's what they think, well, how can I possibly get to be a pilot when they don't even think I should be a decent soldier? So Benjamin Davis, being a very smart young man, realized if I could get through West Point, there's no way they could say that I didn't have what was required, what was needed to become a pilot. So in 1932, Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. gets into West Point. He's the only black cadet there. And they tried to force him to quit. Davis was ostracized and silenced for the time that he was at West Point. No one was permitted to befriend him. They wouldn't even have a roommate. You're 4 years at West Point with no roommate. Benjamin Davis did not have a roommate. On Sundays, during the week, the guys, the military guys, everything is up, hip, up, 1, 2. Well, during the week, the guys were in squads, and each squad knew where they had to go in the mess hall for their meal. Well, Benjamin Davis Jr., being ostracized, was not in a squad. Now, Sunday was sort of like free time at West Point in the mess hall, where you could sort of mingle around and sit with friends and make friends in the mess hall. Well, Benjamin Davis Jr. goes from table to table asking permission from the upperclassmen if he could join them for his meals, and they would refuse him. He was constantly refused the place on Sundays to have his meal. So he either ate in the kitchen or went to everybody else was finished. But that went on for 4 years that Davis was at West Point. Now in 1932-36, Davis's class was graduated. There were 276 cadets in that graduating class at West Point. Benjamin Davis Jr. was number 35 from the top. He was in the top 13% of the graduating class at West Point. They still would not accept him for pilot training in the Army Air Corps. Even though he was one of the top cadets at West Point, you have to be a real exceptional guy to get into West Point in the first place. And then once you're there, then you come out and you're on top of everybody else. They still wouldn't take him as an Air Corps pilot. Even though he had a lot of top grades and stuff, he still had a problem. He had color in his skin. So they would not accept him in the Air Corps. Well, just so happens that one young man named Yancey Williams. Yancey Williams finished a government flying program at Howard University. Now, with the war coming on during the 30s, they knew that airplanes were an integral part of any modern Air Force. But there were no pilots. So the government started civilian pilot training programs in colleges all around the country where young men could go and get pilot training at no cost that the government would pay for. Well, this guy, Yancey Williams, finished his pilot training program at Howard University. He applies to the Air Force for admission to Army pilot training, and they kept refusing him. So he gets with the NAACP, and they sue the Army. And it was that lawsuit where they sued the Army where they said, okay, we'll have a squadron for black pilots. Squadron 99 will be for black pilots. And so in 1941, let's see, Eleanor Roosevelt was flown by Chief Anderson in June of 41. So I think it was in July of 41 when they actually started pilot training for men of color at Tuskegee. Tuskegee was chosen because, in spite of all the prejudice and dumb stuff that went on back then, there were still some highly intelligent white people that realized that it's just a waste of energy and everything. So Eleanor Roosevelt was one of these people. She had this ride with this black pilots. So she happened to be on the board of the Julius Rosenwald Fund. And Tuskegee was able to borrow money from the Julius Rosenwald Fund, and they used that money to buy the land that they used as our training ground, which is Moulton Field. And that's where all of us got our first solos at Moulton Field, based on work that Eleanor Roosevelt did with the Julius Rosenwald Fund. So they started pilot training in 41, and every year there's about maybe 8 or 9 classes that graduate. And a total of 992 men of color received their wings and graduated from the flight school at Tuskegee. 300 and some of those guys flew combat over in Europe. Our guys were credited with shooting down actually 150 in the year. 150 German airplanes were shot down by the guys that were trained at Tuskegee. Then there were also a number of airplanes that were destroyed on the ground by the pilots that were trained at Tuskegee. We received, I'm very proud to wear this medal. This medal was presented to us by President Bush in 2006. President Bush presented us with this medal. When he presented the medal, he saluted. He said, "I'm saluting you to make up for the salutes that you did not receive or salutes that were not returned when you were on active duty." So on the front of this medal, there are three profiles: a pilot, a mechanic, and an administrative officer. But then on the obverse, on the back of the medal, it shows three of the airplanes that our guys flew, but it also explains why we got the medal. It says outstanding combat record, outstanding combat record inspired revolutionary reform of the armed services. This refers to the fact that in 1948, President Harry Truman issued an executive order 9981, which in effect ended segregation in the military. Now, since then, Truman was from, he was from Arkansas or somewhere? Missouri? Okay. Our Truman was from Missouri. But he saw the importance of utilizing all of the manpower available throughout our country. So he figured, well, this racial discrimination hinders the use of all the hands and all the power that this country has. So he issued the executive order which ended segregation in the military. Up to that time, the military was rigidly segregated by race. Up until then, black soldiers and white soldiers were never built together, they were never trained together, they never worked together, anything. But after President Truman issued that order, then men of color could rise up to whatever they aspired to. One of our guys, Daniel Chappie James, became a 4-star general. He was one of the guys that finished the flight program at Tuskegee, and he had also something else he did, but anyway, he became a 4-star general. Since then, a number of men have moved up the ranks, and it reached the point where the first female, once again, the very first female to obtain the rank of 4-star admiral was a woman of color, Michelle Howard. Now, some of you have your cell phone or your computer, whatever that thing is you carry. You can look up Michelle Howard, and you'll see that she was the very first female to obtain the rank of 4-star admiral, and she's a woman of color. As a result of Tuskegee Airmen doing their thing and getting recognition from the president. So I'm very proud of President Obama has said that he stands on the shoulders of Tuskegee Airmen because our guys were able to do what it took for the recognition that we got. So a lot of voting took place, a lot of legislation was passed, and Obama becomes president, and then he had this woman of color who becomes the first 4-star admiral as a result of Tuskegee Airmen. So I'm extremely proud to wear this medal presented to us by President Bush. Thank you.
So you can...
Thank you.
So you can see on the screen the Army War College report of 1925, where they were going to evaluate Negro manpower service there, and saying that in the military they were inferior to the white, and the only job they could do was in the kitchen, dig ditches and everything. And listen to Dr. Richardson, hey, with Benjamin O. Davis there, with Chappie James there, with the future here, the first 4-star admiral here. You can see they disproved this War College report here, which was given to their officer at Carlisle Barracks here. And again, the reason for that is they were trying to keep blacks out of aviation and everything. So let me just go a little further here. And we have pictures up here, people back in the 30s that was flying around showing that black people could fly. And here's a first transcontinental flight here by a guy by the name of Bannon and his, I'm gonna call him Crew Chief Allen, a mechanics here, as they flew from LA to, from West Coast to East Coast, okay? And here we have Chauncey Spencer here and Dale White here. They were showing that black people could fly. And they flew to Washington, D.C. to meet with the junior senator, Harry Truman, there. And Harry Truman said, if you guys can fly this thing here, then I'm going to do whatever I can once I get in a position to help you guys in aviation here. So, again, there were people out there working. And so you see Chief Anderson here from 1907, and he died in 1906. He is considered the father of black aviation. And he's the one that flew Eleanor Roosevelt and how they got the name and was the chief instructor to the Tuskegee Airmen and taught me how to fly when I was 19. And let me just tell you this. Most people don't know. It's a book, and we have it out here, and I'm in the book here, that a guy by the name of Dr. Joe Pons wrote, where he connect the dots here. He took the World War II Tuskegee Airmen, and most of them think of them, all of them going into the Air Force, like Chappie James and First Ace and McGee, who flew 407 combat mission. But there were 3 that went into the Army, and they were the first to fly helicopters in Vietnam. A guy by the name of Bannon is one. So he connects the dot with that. So because of what they were doing back in those days, enabled the other people to complete their dream, including myself. As Dr. Richardson said, it's a fast forward here in 1939 as Nazis invaded Poland and Hitler was taking over. The Army had to review their war capability, and U.S. Census showed that there was only maybe 1,000 pilots in the USA that had their license. So they knew they had to do something to strengthen their aviation program. So from that came the civilian pilot training program. The civilian pilot training program. And this program offered to the colleges to train pilots. And they were supposed to produce something like 20,000 pilots a month, okay? But one thing in the original bill was missing. There was no provision for blacks in that. So it was a senator from Wisconsin put an amendment to that bill, included blacks in that bill. And so aviation was offered at 6 black colleges. Yeah, I'm gonna name them all, but Tuskegee was one of them. I don't know, Delaware State, which is close by, Hampton University, North Carolina A&T, and a civilian school in Chicago. So blacks went to those schools, into civilian school, and they obtained their pilot license. So now we have more blacks receiving aviation training, receiving their license because of the civilian pilot training program. And these were some of the organizations that were pushing them, the Pittsburgh Courier, the NAACP, the Chicago Defender, and there was a presidential election coming up too, and Roosevelt made an agreement with them, if the blacks vote for me, then I'll make sure that I would do everything in my power and create aviation program for blacks in aviation. And he kept his word too. He kept his word, and he did, and that was the beginning. So Dr. Richardson.
Think of what this country has, think of the benefit this country has received from the men of color that have been recognized for what they could do. Think of what was lost by not recognizing a lot of the things that men of color, that people of color could do. When you look into black history, which some people want to deny, if you look into black history, you'll find there's a tremendous amount of benefit that this country has received from utilizing the skills and the knowledge of people of color. I mean, the brain doesn't care what color it's around. The brain just works because the brain works. When you think of genius, I think of Albert Einstein. God chose to put that genius in the brain of a Jew. Albert Einstein, if you didn't know, was a Jew. And God chose to put that genius in the brain of a Jew. Now, who knows what other ethnic group has genius put into its brain by God? Now, if you're discriminating against people because of how they look, then you're losing out on a lot of the benefit of the genius that could be in the brains of an Irish person or a German person or some guy from Africa or someplace. That genius could be in their brain, and mankind could be benefiting from that genius. So that's why it's extremely important not to discriminate against people. Whenever you find anybody that has a spark of genius, do whatever you can to support them so that all of mankind can benefit from the genius that God put in the brain of those individuals. Thank you.
Okay. As Dr. Richardson said, a guy by the name of Yancey Williams had to sue the military to be able to become to fly. And Yancey Williams was able to become a Tuskegee Airman. He was in the last class that they had. So he was able to, even though he sued the Army, he was able to be in the last class to become a Tuskegee Airman. And I'm going to fast forward here and get to some things here. Chief Anderson is up there in the center with Eleanor Roosevelt, right there. Let me do this. Okay. And you know what? Dr. Richardson talked about Benjamin O. Davis, and he was in the first class that graduated. And Dr. Richardson, can you talk about the barracks that they named at Benjamin O. Davis?
In 2017, West Point constructed a new barracks. Now at West Point, a lot of the barracks are named after, prominent generals like Eisenhower.
Eisenhower, yeah.
Who was the guy over in the Pacific?
MacArthur.
MacArthur. Barrack and Clark. Barracks are named after those generals. But in 2017, they erected a new barracks, and they named it after Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr., the guy that they tried to force to quit West Point. They have built a new barracks and honored him by naming that new barracks after Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. Once again, those of you who have that thing, you can look up West Point Barracks or look up Benjamin Oliver Davis, and you'll see that in 2017, they built a new barracks at West Point and named it for Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. They tried to force him to quit, but they realized this guy had the character and the grit and the stamina that they tried to instill in West Point students. So they named a barracks after the guy that they tried to force to quit West Point, but who refused to quit.
And you know what? Tuskegee Airmen, they went overseas to North Africa, and then, as you can see, June 2nd, 1943, they were entered into their first combat mission and everything. This was an experiment, I want you to know now. They are not supposed to succeed at all. And then one day, 60 bombers got shot down, and there's 10 men per bomber. So you can do the math there. 10 times 600 men on one mission. So after that, they came and asked Benjamin David, would you escort the bomber? And Dr. Richardson, would you just take it up from there? And
Yeah, our guys escorted bombers. Well, our squadron oversees the 332nd group was assigned, each group has different designs on the tail, so you can recognize what the different squadrons are. Well, the 332nd group was assigned red paint for the tails of their airplanes. So our guys became known as the Red Tails. And the white bomber guys were happy as all heck when they looked up and saw Red Tails were the ones that were escorting, protecting them, because they knew the Red Tails had a reputation of staying with the bombers and making certain that they got to the target and got back home safely. There's a movie entitled Red Tails.
George Lucas.
Yeah, George Lucas spent $93 million of his money to make that movie ready. He tried to interest other studios to make a movie about black pilots. None of the other studios would do it, so George Lucas, $93 million of his dollars to make the movie Red Tails. Now, even today, if you go on YouTube, you can see the movie Red Tails. YouTube, you can see Red Tails. It's the movie of our guys in combat.
Yeah. And he took the official combat record. And what you see is factual, the true thing. And you can even see them as they're looking at a film one night as they sink a destroyer in the movie. They were the first to sink a destroyer in aviation history. And the higher up said, no way can 4-plane sink a destroyer. They hit the ammo on the destroyer and everything and sank that destroyer. And again, the higher up said it didn't happen. But you got to realize on the planes that they flew, they had cameras to show exactly what they did and assess the damage that they did. So they had to produce the film to higher up before they got credit for it. But they were the first to do that. And then you saw the HBO with Lawrence Fishburne, and that was a good movie. So again, Lieutenant Hall's name is here. And when they first got in combat, he was the first to shoot down a German plane. The first to shoot down a German. The morale was low at that time because the only thing they were shooting at was things on the ground. That's what they were directed to do. But as they were escorting the bomber, Lieutenant Hall shot down a German plane. And for that, they tried to court-martial him for doing that. But Benjamin David had a strategy not to lead the bomber, and he had someone, I'm going to use my word, to take care of the bad guys. Where before, they would lead the bombers so they could become ace. And the German, in the film, you can see they would just wait. And when they left the bomber, they would come in. Okay? But Benjamin David said, no way. He said, if anyone lead the bomber out, you will be court-martialed. And Benjamin David, as you know, 4 years at West Point, he was hard-nosed. He was disciplinary. And they knew he would do it, too. So he was the right man for them. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. 332nd Fighter Group of Form. They painted their tails red. Can you tell about the mission when they went to Berlin there? They escorted them to Berlin. They were not scheduled to go to Berlin now. Dr. Richardson.
Well, it was one of the longest missions in 1945 when the 332nd was scheduled to go to the rendezvous at a certain point, escorting bombers up to a certain point, and then another squadron, was supposed to take the bombers into Berlin. They get up to this certain point, rendezvous point, and the other fighter guys weren't there. So Colonel Davis had the guys take the bombers all the way up to Berlin. And that was like a 16-hour flight, very extremely long flight. But it was also the flight where our guys shot down German jets. Now, during World War II, the United States did not have jets, but Germany had jet fighter planes. The Me-262 was Germany's jet fighter plane. and our guys shot down the first couple of them. But I think altogether our guys shot down 3 German jets. And our guys were just flying P-51s with propellers, and the Germans were flying these, were zooming through with these jets. Well, one guy, he just recently died too.
Roscoe Brown?
Roscoe Brown. He was leading a flight, and he had the guys do a had the guys do a split S, a reverse S, and they would dive down and come in up under the jets. They would gain enough speed. By doing a reverse P, they gained enough speed to get down under the jets and come up and was able to shoot them from underneath. So our guys were the first ones to shoot down German jets. And I think all total in that mission, they shot down 3 of Germany's Me-262s.
And you know what? One I remember by the name of Luther Smith, who shot down 2 German jets, and remember our organization. And he would tell us the story that they had the jets would go past them like, shoo, shoo. But one thing about the P-51, and it could make a short turn, sharp turn. And every time the jet would make a turn, they'd make a wide turn. And then they would line up in the crosshairs of the P-51, and they were shooting them down that way with that short turn. He said they were not very good pilots at that time. And he told me that they were so afraid they were going to lose all their jets to the Tuskegee, the red tail, that they took them out of the sky. They took them out of the air at that time. And Luther told me that some of the guys would take pictures in that mission where some of the Germans would jump out of their plane to keep from being shot down by a red tail plane. They would parachute out. So he would tell the story. So you get all these stories from the guys, you know, about carrying their bags and everything. So it's a lots of history here. And I'm going to fast forward. And as you see, the red tails here. And one thing that Benjamin O. Davis did, he wrote on his plane, by request. Nobody wanted them, and you can see up here, by request up there. So he wrote that on his plane. Nobody wanted them, and all the ones everybody wanted. They were fighting over the red tail to escort them. Hey, I've been fighting too. Okay. And here's a picture of some generals here. As you see, the top of Benjamin O. Davis, Chappie Jane, one of our famous. But here's a guy in the lower by the name of Brigadier General Noah F. Parrish. The highest award that the Tuskegee Airmen give every year is in his name. He was the second commander at the Tuskegee base there. And I'm going to ask Dr. Richardson to just talk a little bit about Lieutenant General Noah Parrish here.
Oh, look, once again, these real intelligent, courageous white people, you run across them once in a while. Well, Parrish was one of them. He finished high school when he was 14. He got his college degree some months before he was 18. He couldn't get a job, so he joined the Army. He gets into the Air Corps, becomes a pilot. And eventually, he became the third or fourth commander at Tuskegee. Now, the previous commanders at Tuskegee followed the local customs when they ran their base. The local customs at Tuskegee where they had colored signs and white signs and colored water and white water and colored air and white air and all that dumb stuff. But Noah Parrish realized that this base was built for the main purpose of training men of color to be pilots. So they should have the best possible atmosphere for their training. So when Parrish gets to Tuskegee, he tells them there will be no discrimination on this base. Get rid of any signs or anything that indicate anything about color. So they had to get rid of all these signs and so forth. And they figured that Noah Parrish set up the conditions at Tuskegee that were favorable to the training of men, of pilots. And as I said before, 992 men of color finished the flight school at Tuskegee and became pilots. So that's why the highest award that we give is in the name of Noah Parrish, because they figure he's the guy that made it possible for all these guys to become pilots.
And here's a Tuskegee Airman. Okay, I'm gonna fast forward. This is just some people of the 99th Fighter Squadron. This is their combat record here. We did have some POWs there. Also, we had 60-something men that's killed in the war there also. So the sacrifice was great. I'm just gonna fast forward here because we're gonna have some OT, some questions here. I just want to get the Congressional Gold Medal in 2007 here that Dr. Richardson is talking about. Here's a picture of the Congressional Gold Medal that Bush gave them, and he wears around his neck. And as Mel said, there are some families that are entitled to this Congressional Gold Medal that never receive it, so we have an outreach program where we give the Congressional Gold Medal to the family also. They have to be vetted and all. So here's some ladies here in the school in Chicago. The ladies were flying during the 40s also. And today, look what we have. We have women flying jets with helicopters, spy plane, everything. And Michelle Howard is down here in the lower left here also. Okay. And this is Bob Kodowski here, the dean who wrote this book about the men and women here. And they fought two wars, the war overseas and the war at home, discrimination war. So we're proud to have these books so that we can keep the legacy alive, keep the history alive, and all. And this book here is the 600 more or less Black helicopter pilots in Vietnam, second edition, Tuskegee Glory here. And one of the professors told me he taught at Morgan. So this guy's a graduate of Morgan State College there. Cliff over there. So he write about it. And the reason he called it the 600 more or less because one record show 595, 605. But yeah, and he tell their story and their sacrifice. This right here, two brothers in Vietnam. And one of them is a World War II pilot here, right here, Drummond, Charles Drummond here, and his brother in Vietnam, both of them a helicopter pilot. So he completed the Tuskegee Airmen program in World War II, and then flew helicopters in Vietnam there. So I just show you that. How to become a member of Tuskegee Airmen and help save our legacy here.
Yeah.
So anyone can be a member of our organization.
I cannot see what's back there, but they'll show you how that there are at least 9 black astronauts. And 4 or 5 of them actually did the extracurricular status where they're attached to the spaceship, but they're outside the spaceship doing things. The ones, well, I can't see what they're wearing white suits. I can't see them. But these are just all the kinds of things that have been done and can be done. When you find idiots that want to eliminate black history from a school's curriculum, you could understand those are real ignorant people. Because black history is American history. And if you eliminate that part of our history, that's just how much more we lose. Hey, it's almost 9 o'clock now, sorry.
Okay.
Q&A.
Okay, let me just say this. We have a website, and you can take a picture of it, called the phillyredtails.org. And you can go on our website and read the bios of the members of our organization. And also, for your kids or for, to get a history lesson, we have a timeline that started in 1800 up to the current time. I call it the 3D. It's a Pennsylvania history, aviation, Tuskegee Airmen history, aviation. And you can just follow the timeline and click on it and get the drop down and read the history of the Tuskegee Airmen and each individual, including videos with it. So phillyredtail.org is our website. And we have bios out there of the guys. We have bios, unknown history that we have collected through our outreach program that nobody knew about. I don't know how many bios we have now. 32? 32 within the last year. Unknown history with the bios and with the family and everything. So
maybe we could get some questions.
So question.
If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll give you the mic for your question.
Got one question in the back here.
You started training in 1941, but you didn't get into the war until what, 43 or so? What'd you do between 41 and 43, all these trained pilots?
What did you say?
So
After the war, what did you do?
1941.
Training started in 1941, July 1941. That's when the training started.
Yeah, so he asked, what did you do between finishing training in 41 and deploying in 43? What did you do? What did the Tuskegee Airmen do for those 2 years? Where were they?
I didn't get in until 41.
Right, but what did the rest of the trainers, the pilots?
Well, you had to go through standard basic military training. We went to Keesler Field, Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, Keesler Field for standard military training. You know, how to use the rifle, how to drill, how to crawl through the dirt and all that kind of dumb stuff. Well, we did all that prior to getting to Tuskegee.
So the first graduates didn't happen until 1943. They started
Right.
in 41, but they didn't graduate.
The first class was 1942.
To graduate.
So I think what the question is, that can answer is it took 40 weeks for a pilot to do the training. So they started, and it took almost a year for one person to complete the training. So they didn't all start in 41, they started in different ways.
Yeah.
So that you would have them go through training of 40 weeks.
And they had training in between, as Dr. Richardson said, navigation school and different training.
Some of your early footage in the film there, you're flying P-47 Thunderbolts. How and when did you make a transition to P-51 Mustangs?
Who is this person?
He's right here.
What's the question?
P-40, started with P-47,
Didn't you hear me?
No, we started with, my first fighter was a P-40. Well, our guys flew 4 different airplanes, P-39s, P-40s, P-47s, and P-51s. They started off with 39s. And my first airplane, my first one was a P-40. Then I went to P-47s. And then the guys over in combat flew the P-51, the Red Tails.
Yeah, so they didn't get the P-51s until they were overseas. And they got hand-me-downs.
That's your question? So all the Mustangs were overseas.
And once you're a pilot, you can transition into other aircraft. You know, you just got to know those emergency procedures.
You know, once you learn how to fly an airplane, then it's just a matter of reading the technical manual about that specific airplane. You know how to fly. Now, what the specifics for any one particular airplane are in the tech manual. So you study the tech manual to learn about any different things about that particular airplane.
I guess I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. I want to thank you for sharing the legacy of how blacks served in World War II, because the problem has been for a long time, a lot of people don't really know. They know about you, but if I brought up the Black Panthers, they probably would not know who they are. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things they need to understand is that when you started to talk about the segregation, hopefully down the road, as they do their research, they will find out who Dr. Charles Drew is and the importance of how he played in World War II, because blacks and whites could not get blood, they were separated. They couldn't get, that's just the way it was. Blacks could only get black blood and whites could only get white blood. I know that sounds crazy to you, but that's just the way it was. But Dr. Charles Drew is the one that developed the plasma. So these are the things that I'm glad that you're out here telling the story on, because those things need to be told. So thank you very much, because as time has progressed on, as you're getting older, we need to get young people like my man up there who can go and continue to tell the story of how we served this country, and black folks have been in wars from all the way down from the Revolutionary War all the way up to now. Thank you.
And let me,
One professor at a university in Denmark said there have been white people on this earth for only then he was only 5,000 years. Prior to that, there weren't any white people. But the reason people got white is because they left Africa and moved away, and the sun's rays that are needed to make vitamin D3 are hindered by pigment in the skin. So when you leave to get away from the sun, the body no longer needs the pigment for color, for protection. So the body doesn't use, the body gets rid of it, called the melanin that protects. And that's how the skin gets lighter and lighter. The farther away and the longer you away from the equator, the less melanin you have and the lighter and lighter the skin is, so that the sun's rays can get through and make vitamin D3. So that's how people get to be white.
Yeah, let me say
left the equator. Go.
Let me say this. We talk about the pilots, and Mel said, just one book talk about the mechanics. Now think about this. These guys are learning to be pilots and fly this machine. Now who's going to keep that aircraft in the air? They were sustained by all black mechanics, crew chief. And while the pilots are training, the mechanics are learning the aircraft and how to keep it in the air. Matter of fact, they were so good at what they did that the French came over to just study the Tuskegee Airmen mechanics and try to figure out how they learned so quick and so fast this machine. And I said machine, this airplane. So the mechanics played a key role in keeping that aircraft in the air. And they were technical too. They knew engines, they knew avionics, they knew all of this, okay? They were self-sustained by blacks.
Aaron, it's after 9.
Yeah, we have one last question right here.
Over there.
One last question. I know it's almost your bedtime.
This is just an observation. I was in the United States Air Force. I was a weapons officer, and Benjamin O. Davis was my TAC commander. Great man, made great decisions. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our President Chris to present some thank you gifts for making it all the way up here from Philadelphia. And thank you for being patient for everybody tonight, for joining us, and thank you for your patience while we get everything set up.
Thanks, everyone. I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. Thanks, Jeff. I also want to thank Jeff for helping to put together the program for tonight. He was our coordinator and scheduler for the Tuskegee and worked with him from the beginning. Thank you, Jeff. And so I want to present the speaker gift next and have a few closing remarks. So we have 3 gentlemen. I have 3 coffee mugs for you guys, or round tables. Let me give them to you. First, I have a few words then. Aaron, here's one for you. Dr. Richardson, one for you as well. And Mel, one for you as well. Thank you all guys for being here. I want to start off by thanking Dr. Richardson, our Tuskegee Airman tonight. And he served this country with distinction. He's wearing the gold medal right now that President Bush awarded to him. Now, I told Doctor earlier that I met him before about 10 years ago. I saw him speak at the World War II Air Show in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I'm happy to see you again tonight and meet, renew our acquaintance again. And also, we have all veterans on stage here. We want to thank also for these gentlemen all working together in harmony tonight. President of the Tuskegee organization, treasurer of the Tuskegee organization, and one of our veterans here at the World War II. And so they all took part in. Oh yes, so oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the raffle tickets are. You'll have another opportunity. What after the meeting, right, Jeff? Yeah. So last minute chances for the lottery ticket for the tickets for the will be on. Oh, I'm supposed to read the winner.
Yep.
So one of our winners is for the tickets. I'll read off the number. You should have a stub as well. 964-873. Do we have a winner? 964-873. Sounds like the price is right here. Okay, back here. Okay. Oh, thanks.
That's the other winner.
And I keep here, you got it, Joe? Oh, thanks. So, another one. Another winner is number 964862. Do we have a 964862 here tonight? Oh, in the middle. Okay, great. When you pick it as well. Do you keep this, or we get it? You don't have the 964. Okay. Oh. Sorry about that. I saw a hand go up over there, and it got me a little bit turned around. But all right. So, did we have the winner for 964862? We did. Okay. All right. So, last few remarks here. Our speaker, August 1st, Harry Miller, 740th Tank Battalion, U.S. Army, Battle of the Bulge, and et cetera. Our next speaker. And thank you all for being here tonight. And by the way, books are in the back for sale. Other Tuskegee mementos. Please take a look tonight. And also our regular books for sale. And our Helmet Committee guys in the back would appreciate any donation you might want to think about giving us. Thanks for all for being here, and see you next time. Thank you.